What's up, everybody? Welcome in to another edition, a 2023-2024 edition of SSPN Postgame, and the first SSPN Postgame recapping a game that includes Victor Wembanyama, Ethan.
Mm. Yeah, it's a magical feeling, Jude. I've been waiting. How long has it been since it was announced we had the number one pick? Was that back in April?
I think it was May
May?
16th. May 16th, I believe, was the lottery date.
May, June, July, August, September. It's been a long 5.5 months
Mm-hmm.
of waiting for this moment, but it was well worth the wait, Jude, to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We appreciate you guys that are in here right now. I see Callow5, Wizard 8000, of course, my guy Tanner as well.
My
We
guy.
appreciate you guys being in here. Let's just jump into this box score, Ethan. Why would we waste any time?
Mm.
So, obviously, the story of the day, of course, is going to be Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren as well. I guess we can just start off with that matchup because really that's what jumps off the table, Ethan. Give me your thoughts on how they matched up tonight. And really, I know this is a Spurs show, but like I think it's a good time to also talk about what we saw from Chet too, because this is going to be a rivalry for the Spurs for a decade if things go well for both teams.
Yeah, to start off, they didn't play the exact position. I kind of hoped that they would, but Chet really played that five spot while Wemby was playing definitely the four. So Wemby wasn't really defending Chet,
Yeah,
but Chet was defending Wemby. And when they were going at each other, especially in that first half, 'cause I think that's really Chet only played the first half and Wemby only played like a couple minutes into the second half before they pulled him. But it was really just going back and forth. They have such similar skill sets. They both can put the ball on the floor, get to the rim, and finish. They can also pull up from 3-point range and have obviously a really, really, really good handle for somebody at their size. But I'm taking Wemby at 20 points, 4 boards, a couple blocks. Like he was playing very aggressively for his first game, and in that first game in summer league, he had a lot of rust, a lot of nerves, a lot of things
right.
to learn. That wasn't the case tonight. He looked very comfortable. He looked like he was looking for his own shot, but also had the vision that we kind of saw in that silver versus black scrimmage that we were expecting to see tonight. Um, but at the same time, you got to give Chet his props because he came out and he did his thing as well. And I have nothing against Chet Holmgren. You're right. This is going to be a matchup to watch for the next, hopefully 2 decades, barring
Right.
injuries, but at least 1 decade for sure.
Yeah, and that's kind of excuse me. That's kind of why I wanted to touch on Chet, just because of
Yeah.
the fact that like this probably will be somebody that we'll be matching up with for years to come. And
Mm-hmm.
we've already had some past playoff battles with the Thunder, Ethan. We
Yep.
might have more in store, but man, I don't even know where to start with Victor. I mean, I guess I can start with our man Wizard 8000's comment here. I know we're covering ourselves up, but he says Wemby is for real. And I know that obviously, I don't think anybody was coming in here thinking that it was just going to be a total implosion. But when you get to see some of the plays that you saw tonight, like I texted you during the game on the up and under jelly layup,
Yeah.
I've just
Lefty.
I've just never seen anything like that watching basketball, Ethan.
He had the hang time of someone that's like 6'3" with a 45-inch vertical. That's what's weird about it. Is it literally looks like we made like a my player that's 7'5" that has the ability of a guard. Like it's so shocking because you haven't seen that yet. Like Kristaps Porzingis, like there have been guys kind of at that size that are very skilled and unicornish. But you're right. I've never seen anybody do something quite like that. That's otherworldly, alien.
Yeah, yeah. That's why Nike's branding him as the extraterrestrial, as we've mentioned many a
Yeah.
times. The other thing I want to talk about is his 3-point shooting, because I know that's kind of one of the things that maybe people would point at coming into this season. If you just look at the percentage that he had in France, but as you saw tonight, even on the ones he missed, went 2 for 5 tonight, which is 40%. Obviously, a bigger sample size. I'm not trying to say he's going to be a 40% shooter. I'm just saying that he shot well tonight.
Yeah.
And those last 2 threes that he hit, like in the way that he hit them coming off screens, remember how we were talking about that pin down action that we saw?
Mm-hmm.
I know that wasn't necessarily a pin down action there, but just any situation where you're getting him on the perimeter running off screens, the fact that he can hit those shots, especially the last 3 he hit in motion, kind of similar to the one-legged threes that we saw in all the highlights, going into the draft and throughout last season. That I liked his confidence. I liked the way his shot looked from there. And then, of course, when it comes to his scoring on the interior, I mean, we saw the luxuries of having a dude with an 8-foot wingspan. The first missed free throw, he just
Mhm.
grabs it, and then it's like, oh, no one can contest this. I'm gonna drop it in the basket.
Yeah.
Like, there's just some stuff that he does that you can't guard. And the Thunder broadcasters, that was the stream that I had to watch the game. They were saying the same thing, and the same thing can be said for Chet. He got a couple baskets on Zach. Obviously, I get he's 7'1", he's not 7'4", and that is a giant difference, as you could even see tonight.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when you have that type of height, you're able to just watching both of them do that the way that they did, where they just like dropped it in the basket. I saw a bunch of tweets throughout tonight talking about how it feels like you're watching the future of basketball. And
Mhm.
that's the same way that I felt watching Wemby.
I'm just excited to see what they look like playing against like real deal centers. Like against each other,
Right.
it was one thing because they're both slender builds and have similar skill sets. But when they go against Embiid, Jokic, AD, Giannis, like these are the matchups that I'm looking forward to seeing. But my buddy Tanner brought up a good point about Wemby. Like, what's the value of having Wemby cheat on defensive rebound opportunities? And I think what he means by that is running out in transition. Like basically, as soon as the opposing team shot went up, he was out in transition, and he got a couple baskets early on doing that. But what's the value in that compared to if he were to crash the board because of that 8-foot wingspan, 7-foot frame, and actually because he only had what 5 tonight,
Yeah.
um, which you would expect a lot more from somebody at his size.
Yeah, and for context, like Chet had 9, right?
Yeah.
But I think also, and not even to necessarily make excuses, because I agree with what you just said. But at the same time, he is playing the 4, and we're
Yeah.
playing him a little
True.
bit more on the perimeter. And you saw Zach working a lot tonight in the paint, even when things didn't go well for Zach. Like, he was the guy in the paint. Same thing with
Mhm.
Bassie. We did get to see, like, I think it was only like a 4-minute stretch, but we got to see a little bit of Bassie and Wembanyama in the front court together. Um, I, you know, the Shams report was legit.
Yeah.
I know that Pop and the guys they're saying we're trying to figure out where he's going to play, but I think the 4 is where he's going to be at least, at 19 years old as of right now. We'll see as the years progress, and if he adds more muscle, maybe when he's 23 years old and he's maybe up to like 245 or something at that point. You know what I mean? Or maybe we'll have to see how much weight he puts on. But it seemed like he did insinuate at media day that he wanted to stop right now, but kind of it seemed like he was insinuating that he would continue to put weight on in
Hmm.
future off seasons as his body kind of grows and develops. So that could maybe be a Sohan Wemby front court way down the line. Obviously, there's a lot of contract stuff there too. But as of right now, it seems like he's going to be at that 4 position. And so I think that might take away from his rebound stats. Long-winded way of saying that.
Yeah, for sure. And I also just like watching him in summer league and with his Paris team and watching highlights. He really doesn't like that's not his game. Like fighting for boards. Like I know he's 7'4", but that's not really what he
That is
does.
true.
He's always kind of wanted to push the tempo and get out in transition. That's kind of always what he's done, and it was effective when we could actually get the rebound over Chet, um, which proved to be difficult at times because poor Zach 6'11" compared to his 7'1". But he was really fighting down there. Shout out to Zach Collins. He was putting in work. My poor guy was on the ground probably just as much as he was standing on his 2 feet.
Yeah, and our guy Too Clutch Clory makes a great point here. Facts. Can't wait to see
Yeah.
Sohan and Keldon next to him cutting hard when he gets it at the elbow off his flashes. We saw a little bit of that tonight. Our boy Doug. Doug had a lot of good cuts.
Mm-hmm.
Malachi as well. The little
Yes.
drop that Malachi has, there's so much that we can get into. I probably should go back to the box score, but we had to start off with Wemby, of course. So I guess any final thoughts on Wemby before we kind of get into the rest of the roster?
If this is what he could do with this team in a first preseason game with all this hype, I just can't wait to see what he's able to do with KJ and Jeremy also playing alongside him because those are 2 very physical
Right.
pieces that add a lot um, dimensionally to our offense and defense. Because I don't think Josh Giddey would have had as good of a game as he did had Jeremy Sohan been matched up against him rather than Trey.
And we just saw the comments that Keldon made that made the rounds around Spurs Twitter, just talking about how he's going to be the enforcer. You
Yep.
know, he feels like he's going to be an enforcer, but it's also going to be a team of enforcers. And probably if you wanted to have a big three of enforcers, it would be Zach, Keldon, and Sohan. So 2 out of the 3 guys were out tonight. And then on top of that, Sohan and Keldon are also 2 of our 5 best players, just in all honesty as well. So
For sure.
that's something you have to keep in mind. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's still a preseason game, and Shea Gilgeous didn't play for them. So I think it kind of evens out. But I think, overall, it was just so fun to watch, man. But the other thing, okay, getting into the rest of just other than Wemby, though, the other thing I wanted to talk about was rotations with you. And I know that, how do I put this? I know that kind of coming into it, we had slotted Devontae Graham as the backup point guard. We had kind of slotted maybe it was either going to be Shetty or Doug, maybe even Doug starting tonight. Maybe like we weren't sure what the backup 3 was going to shake out as, right? We knew Keldon was going to be the starter, but we weren't sure what the order was whenever it came to Champagnie, Doug, and Shetty Osman. And also another thing that you talked about was Mamu Kelishvili, was Shetty Osman playing the 4, which he came out tonight, and that's what he was starting at. And he came on the floor and played much longer than Mamu, So kind of coming into this, I think you and I, at least me, I had expected Devontae and Mamu maybe being the backup point guard and backup 4. But tonight what we saw was a lot of Blake Wesley, and then we had Doug and Shetty out there as well. And that's kind of why we said we didn't want to shun all possibilities, but I think we got some inklings in the rotation. I think that Blake Wesley is going to be the backup point guard, Ethan.
I'm not mad at that at all. If he can continue what he did tonight, I know, again, only 18 minutes of play, preseason game 1 against backups, but he came out with significant energy defensively, and he didn't look lost to me at all. Like last year, that was his biggest problem, was looking lost defensively and then just making ill-advised mistakes offensively. 0 turnovers, very good defense, and gave me flashes of, dare I say it, a young DeJounte Murray.
I would say he's a better shooter than DeJounte, naturally.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, he hit that one three. I know it was a shot clock violation, but it had good form. He looked way more comfortable and at ease the entire time. And when he came in the game, I was the same as you, Jude. It was like, oh, Blake Wesley. Okay, I guess Devontae Graham is the 3rd string. And the way Devontae played tonight, left a little bit to be desired in my eyes. But no disrespect to him. I know, again, one game.
I get you. It's just so funny because literally the first shot he took, bro, was a contested 3, no hesitation. Like first time he gets the ball, just immediately shoots it. I'm like, oh. But that's kind of why Devontae is fun, though.
Oh, wait. Blake Wesley had 1 turnover. Excuse me. 1 turnover.
There you
go. But definitely just body language-wise and approach to the game looked way more comfortable. So if he can continue doing that, I have no problem with him taking those backup minutes. And in fact, in the season preview, we both agreed, like, even if he didn't take a jump, might as well play him. Like,
right.
What's the point in not?
Yeah.
Like, just to make Devontae improve a little bit more. Like, I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I think, and you don't want to overreact too much from a preseason game.
True.
But defensively, he looked great. I mean, in comparison to last year, and like I just said, it is a preseason game, so it's hard to say that anything's great after that. But still, it looked like a significant improvement. And as our man Mark just said, his shot selection has improved. His finishing is still a work in progress. But I would say that still the step back 3, the little mid range that he found, it seems like the shot arc and everything in those, I guess you could say, motions during the shot, if you will, because a lot of Blake's shots, are like moving. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In the mid range at the elbow when he finds a spot, a little bit similar to Malachi. Now that I kind of think about it,
yeah, he's a rhythm scorer.
Different, but similar. The finishing, it looked a little better tonight, and I don't think we would have given him all those minutes and just played Devontae in the 4th quarter if that's not what we're aiming for. And considering he was a 1st round pick, it also makes sense. But I do want to acknowledge what Tanner said earlier, how he said, could Wesley over Graham tonight be a vet/young guy thing? Like, and I think what he's saying there, right. And I could see that. I mean, I wouldn't be, because it's going to do more for Blake to play these minutes in the preseason than it will for Devontae, even if Devontae is going to end up be the backup point guard. But I really think with what I saw tonight and the way that, think about it, basically all of like the people who are going to get, like we know for sure are going to get minutes this season, played for the majority of that third quarter. And then, of course, we saw Barlow and the gang come in the fourth quarter. You know what I
Barlow
mean?
and the gang.
So you know what but you get what I'm saying? Like, I
Yeah.
feel like they're playing those other guys together because they're going to be playing together in the season. Maybe I'll be proven wrong, but that was kind of what I took away from Blake. But that wasn't the only thing, Ethan, because Julian Champagnie got the start. So tell me what you think about that. That could be just a preseason thing. We think he'd fit best with this lineup. But one of the things that we talked about in our season preview was that we don't know what his ceiling is yet.
Yeah.
And we kind of do know what Shetty and Doug's ceiling is.
I, I was not surprised by it. He can kind of play 2 or the 3. He doesn't need the ball. He can be an off-ball shooter, move off of screens, good cutter, solid defender. He did not play well tonight. 23 minutes, 1 for 5. That one shot was a 3. He missed his other 3s at 25%,
Mm-hmm.
minus 15 in the box score. But his frame is, at 6'9", long arms. I don't have a problem with him taking that spot. He kind of reminds me, and I always do this, Jude, and I know it probably annoys some people. I always compare some of these guys to like championship level Spurs back in the
Okay.
day. But he's given me flashbacks to like 2012, 2013 Danny Green, where it's like
Okay.
we picked this guy up literally off the trash heap. He was a Danny Green was Austin Spurs first. We brought him up. I don't think we had two ways at the time. I could be wrong about that.
No, we
Uh,
didn't. Yeah.
but he became the starting shooting guard, not because he was better than Manu Ginobili, but because he kind of fit there next to a ball dominant point guard and Tony Parker, and could be a 3-and-D guy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I expect from him moving forward. Will he start for the rest of his career? No, obviously not. He will probably be a backup 3 or even the third string 3, depending on how things shake out with Doug and Chetty. But moving forward, everyone knows I'm high on Julian Champagnie. I like his game. He played really well at the end of last year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll have to see, but that could be a sign of how the rotation is. It might be,
Yeah,
I don't know though. It's hard to see them taking Doug off the floor, but maybe that's how it stacks out right now.
it could have
But
also been, sorry to cut you off.
no,
I
please.
completely forgot. This is probably the most important point. To go to your point, what you were saying about Blake and Chetty and Doug playing and the majority of the time together, and then you're like, okay, maybe that's the rotation. We're trying to get chemistry with these guys. Maybe that's the thought process with putting Julian in the starting lineup, because you don't affect that backup unit, and they have time to gel together. So
That could be the case as well too. But another takeaway though here, Mamu, our boy Mamu, he really didn't come in until like, was it?
yeah,
It was the third
fourth
quarter.
quarter, I think.
Yeah, fourth quarter, right? And that was Shetty Osman playing the 4. And the one thing I noticed as soon as Shetty stepped on the floor, because he's playing next to Doug, you could see the difference. He's bigger than Doug.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not only in just height, because they actually did release that. Doug is now listed at 6'6" officially
Ooh.
on the Spurs roster. I know he's been listed at 6'8", so but he's 6'6", like 225, and or it might be a little bit less than that. But Shetty is 6'7", 230, and he looked like it. And you
Mm-hmm.
had mentioned that. I was kind of more leaning towards Mamu. I just thought that was what it was going to be after what we saw from him at the end of last season. But Shetty is just a pure Spurs role player, dude. He talked about how every foreign player like dreams of coming to play for the Spurs. We talked about his championship experience as a role player, man. I like it. And I think that he is a better option than Mamu. I know it's just one preseason game, but I think I was just reminded of Chetty's experience, and
Mm-hmm.
also the fact that he can, like, he had in his size as well, as I was just talking about. So that was something you mentioned could be a possibility. And it seems I would be very surprised if Shetty doesn't end up a part of the bench rotation.
I would too. I mean, he is much more physical of a presence than I had thought. Granted, I don't really watch the Cleveland Cavaliers all that often in my spare time, but I expected him to be kind of exactly like Doug, but he has a little more physicality to his game than Doug McDermott. But they also play
Right.
off of each other very well. There was a couple moments in that first and second quarter where Doug and Chetty were basically passing it back and forth to each other as they dip, dive, dodge, duck, dip, dive, like
They were
just
running pick and rolls at times together.
literally. And it was really hard to defend because they're both so um, quick and talented when it comes to cutting and moving off of screen. So if we can play those two guys, and I don't know who the backup point guard will be. Maybe it's even Trey Jones if Jeremy starts at the point guard. But with Trey Jones being that facilitator, when you have Doug on their left, Chetty on your right, Malachi being that scoring presence, that's tough to defend.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned Trey there. I'm just trying to jump to all these
Yeah,
guys
there you
because
go.
I'm sure a lot of other people want to hear about Devin. We'll talk about him in a second. But Trey, you can look and see 3 for 9, but really, I thought he played a pretty solid game. It's the same thing. We talked about it in the preseason preview for Trey, or the point guards, what we want him to improve on. Finishing on floaters. There were a couple that looked good, and then we still saw a couple that didn't look as good. I like the 3-point shot. Bang that to start. I know he missed one later, or did he miss one?
He
Or
missed
did it
two, I
was
think.
okay? I know he got fouled on the other one. I think that was the second one he got fouled on. I like that. Still, a work in progress in those things, but I would say that it seems like it's a little bit better.
Yeah.
I think that his offensive game will be better this season. Not saying it's going to be world beating. I just think it'll be a little bit closer to Tyus, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, his jumper looked smoother at the very least. There's no hitch in it. It comes off his hand cleanly. Um, he looked confident out there. He looked comfortable. And I will say this though, part of his struggles, if you want to call them that, were due to Cason Wallace, who was an absolute fiend defensively. I mean, nobody could really bring it up the court comfortably when Cason Wallace was defending them. So shout out to him. I think that's more so a Cason Wallace compliment
Yeah.
than it is a Trey Jones critique.
Well, and I mean, all love to Trey, but like straight up, as much as he has more experience over Kaysen. Kaysen is just a physically bigger, more athletic dude from Kentucky. That can kind of, I mean, he's 6'4", a little bit more muscle. Like he has the ability to kind of impose his will a little bit, as much as he's a rookie. So I think that's a great point there. Okay, so let's talk about Devin, because 2 for 7, it didn't look like the greatest shooting game. He did have 3 steals though.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really worried about it. I think he's just finding his place.
Yeah, it honestly didn't look like we were trying to get him the ball that
That's
much.
another thing. Yeah.
Maybe we
Only
struggled.
7 shots.
Maybe it was OKC's defense, but to me, I just felt like we were moving the ball to other guys, i.e., Wembanyama. He just didn't feel like he was a key part of the offense in any way. So of course he's going to struggle because he's a guy that needs the ball in his hands to be effective. And I don't want to give him excuses. 2 for 7, obviously not a great night, but I'm not worried about it either.
Yeah, not a terrible night either, especially when you factor in you get 3 steals on the defensive end as well. And there were some times, I think there was one time he did get beat, but they're always showing effort. That's another thing I want to talk about. Now that this kind of leads into it, the way that we play. Can't you see a little bit? I mean, I know it's similar. It's like kind of what we were trying to do last year, but with like more intensity, but you can see a difference. And I know that this was a high scoring game and they talked about being better defensively, but and I know that the second you kind of see they built a 19-point lead, it looked a lot better, and then you let them come back in with the same roster. So you don't necessarily, that wasn't, you got to play a complete game.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think you did see some things that really show some promise for this season whenever it comes to our effort in our switches and just the intensity on it. Like it's this, we kind of complained last year about switch everything. And I think a little bit of that, and I remember doing that specifically because I was like, oh, guys are undersized and that's just letting guys get buckets. Well, one, now that I think about it, when you have Wembanyama, he can, that kind of cleans up a lot whenever you switch everything because he
Yeah.
can kind of close out from everywhere. But aside from that fact, the intensity that we're like our rotations, just like the effort and the intensity is like just at another level. And that makes it look a lot better as a scheme concept. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think it starts with Pop. He's probably set the tone early on in training camp. I mean, they've all talked about it nonstop in their media availability. Is last year was about learning and developing. We're trying to win this year. I know they won't, just because of the sake of the Western Conference and the parity that's there, and we're still a very young team with a lot to learn. But at the same time, there's been an attitude adjustment for everybody, and I think it's clearly visible in the defensive end because defense is what an effort stat. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, there is that's all it is, really. I mean, there are definitely some things you have to learn as far as rotations and scheme, but it's 90% effort.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We got to talk about Wemby defensively. We kind of talked about
Yeah.
him offensively. And the first thing when you're talking about that is J Dub gets the crossover,
Yep.
clean crossover.
Yep.
Poor guy still gets stuffed, man, because he can just recover. He can get crossed up and still block you.
Yeah.
Like, and the crazy thing was, it's just like he does a little stumble and then he's like, okay, he's over there. Let me just like give effort. Anyways, yeah, he impacts a lot. Not only with just his own ability in one-on-one situations, and it's so funny too because I think he's going to get the timing down
Mm-hmm.
because there were so many where he was like just fingertips away and like they went in, and it's just like still the fact that he even got that close to potentially blocking it from when the shot was taken. I think he's going to get the timing down on more of those, and we're going to see. I It's going to be interesting to see how many blocks he averages this year, dude. He might have a chance to like be like up there like 2 or 3. I
Yeah.
know that sounds crazy ambitious, but who in the NBA? I mean, okay, maybe Manute Bol, but like Manute didn't move like him. Like who's had a 8-foot wingspan that moves like him? It's not like, like I'm not trying to disrespect other people. It's just he's just you can't really include him in the standards of other discussions whenever it comes to blocks when you
Mm-hmm.
consider his body frame.
Yeah. No, you're right. It'll have to come game to game
That
because
might be ambitious, but
it'll depend on the matchups, right? Because like tonight he only had one block, and why that was in my eyes was he was guarding Lou Dort, J Dub. It's like 3 4s, and so
mhm,
he was at the 3 point line for most of his defensive possessions. So if he's guarding guys that are like true fours and they're kind of in that dunker spot in the mid range, he's going to get a lot of blocks because of what Tanner's saying. He has the potential to be the greatest recovery / help defender out there because of his length, and he has such great instincts as far as has a knack for the ball and can find it and block it because of his 8 foot wingspan. So it'll depend. If he's doing that, he's going to have 6 blocks a game. If he's guarding guys along the perimeter the entire time, it might be a struggle because he's just not close enough, even for him.
yeah, yeah. And just going back to Devin a little bit, I don't know what I was gonna say. I just completely blanked there. I don't know what I was thinking. Um, but offensively as well. So we just talked about the defensive concepts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Offensively, and this is what tied into Devin. You mentioned how we weren't trying to get him the ball. I wonder, this is just the preseason, but I really wonder. I mean, I think we're definitely going to have an emphasis probably getting him the ball more as the regular season comes. But I also think at the same time, we are just like playing like willing passers as an offense. Like the first thing that pops into my mind, think about last year with Blake Wesley. I mean, it wasn't Devonte Graham level, but it was like he would just try to go get a layup in transition almost every time. And there was one today where and it was after he had taken a bad shot earlier. He just stopped and dropped off. It didn't even ended up getting made, but just dropped off a wide open 3 to Shetty in transition. And
Mm.
it's like that type of stuff. You talked about Shetty and Doug passing the ball, Wemby and Zach passing as well in the post, the intensity whenever it comes to ball movement, and also the effort when it comes to ball movement, kind of same theme as defense, right?
Mm-hmm.
A notch up. And that also impressed me. And it makes the offense look different, despite the fact that the concept is still basically the same as last season.
It's a free form offense, and I think we tried to do it last year, but it was really a struggle because we didn't have anybody to draw to. Like we talked about nonstop last season. With Victor, it opens up everything. And I really think just him being on the court, being on the team, and like you're saying, everybody's improved a little bit, and the effort and the aggression has been notched up a little bit. Everything should fall into place. Where we struggled last year executing offensively, that shouldn't be the case anymore.
Mm-hmm. The more I'm thinking about it as we talk, you can tell we're being intentional with those things. We're much more intentional about
Yes.
those things that we're talking about. And intentionality will breed better execution. And that's
Mhm.
something that's still going to have to improve throughout the season. I think and it's just a preseason game, but still, I think we saw tonight that there's still going to be some things execution wise that, we have to work on and clean up. But at the same time, we didn't have Keldon and Sohan. So you don't
Mhm.
want to take too much away from it. But another guy that a lot of people have been talking about in the comments, Ethan, that I think we should also touch on is Charles Bassie. He had 12 boards tonight, led the team in boards, a quiet 12. That's crazy. I looked out. I didn't even realize it was that much. He had 2 blocks as well, 3 for 5, 6 points. Man, Brian Wright mentioned on the silver and black scrimmage, he was actually the first person he mentioned when they talk about having a breakout year. I think he is a very solid center, and I don't think that his ceiling is capped yet either because he's so young, and we have him on a 4-year deal for 2.5 million every year. So, dude,
Mhm.
like 2 years from now, that might be like one of the best contracts in the league. We'll have to see, but I love his physicality. He's a run, jump, and dunk center. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
also he showed he's got a little bit more skills to him than that, though. I don't want to disrespect him too much. You can go watch the Austin Spurs G League tape from last year, and he definitely also has some passing skills as well. So I loved what I saw from Charles. I know a lot of people are talking about him maybe starting over Zach in the comments, and you guys can have your opinions, but we're just that's just not going to happen because Pop said it last year. Like that's not
Yeah.
going to happen. If it does and we're proven wrong, then great, because that means that Charles has really taken a jump. But just with Greg Popovich's comments like at the end of last season, I really don't see that being the case. But with that being said, I love Charles and I'm so glad he's on the team, and he played great tonight.
Agreed. I love Charles Bassie. I think you covered him pretty well as far as his strengths and weaknesses. Uh, for those of you trying to say that he should start over Zach because of their performances tonight, or he eventually will, to be fair, Charles really didn't match up with the starters at all for OKC. He didn't have to endure Chet Holmgren reaching just over him and grabbing rebounds. Zach was. So like if you really watch like their individual I wish you could have that tape. Just like every possession Zach played and every possession Charles played, completely different matchups. I still love
Mm-hmm.
Charles. Really physical, great rebounder, good dunker, solid presence on the court. But Zach does way more for our offense. And until Wemby's willing and able to take kind of that role from Zach, I think Zach will remain the starting center.
Yeah, there's a difference between Chet and Jalen Williams. I think is a good way to
Yeah,
put it. No
that's yeah.
disrespect to Jalen Williams, but another thing that's popping out on the stat sheet, Ethan, that I didn't even realize, and we talked about him a little bit. Malachi went 6 for 8 tonight, 2
Yeah.
for 2 from 3, 1 steal, 1 block as well, 15 points. I texted you during the game. I just said polished Malachi because that's what he looked like. I mean, we talk about you talk about the bench unit this year. He really might be like an automatic 15. I know he had 15 tonight. It's not going to be every night, but I think it's gonna be close to that because last year he averaged 10.
Yeah.
So I know we got Wemby, there's going to be more sharing, and the other stats will have to still be distributed. But when you think of his role off the bench,
Yeah. I think 15 is really a safe bet, honestly. I think that's definitely within his wheelhouse based on what he showed us tonight. He's just, yeah, smooth is probably the best way to put it. He looks
mm-hmm.
so comfortable out there, like at ease. I don't want to say this because he's not the exact same player, but you know how Paul George just never looks like he's struggling?
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying.
Same vibe, same
Right.
confidence level.
Yeah. And the fact that translated from summer league was really
Yeah.
nice to see. Really nice to see. Um man, any other final there's one thing we haven't mentioned.
I think I know where you're going.
Yeah, you know exactly where I'm going with
I was
this.
about to
We
say it
saw
too.
Charles Bediako tonight. I did see Kem Birch, but I don't think he's touching the court ever.
Hey,
Bro,
he was
hey,
all
he was
smiles.
there.
He was happy to be there. He's wearing a Spurs shirt.
He's got not new blonde dreadlocks. That's how I noticed
Yeah.
him. I was like, "Who's the guy with the blonde dreadlocks?" Oh, if there's somebody on the team who I don't know who it is, of course it's Kem Birch. But
Uh-huh.
when they put Bediako in,
I
bro,
mean,
poor guy, man. He's just sitting there to get cut.
shout out to my guy Kim Birch, man. He's just this season's Al Farouk Aminu. That's all he is. But even Al Farouk Aminu played in the silver and blacks like
He played in
scrimmage.
preseason too.
Yeah, he
And
played
the
in
difference
preseason.
was he wasn't on the team for like almost a year.
Yeah, Kim Birch has been here literally since last February.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Since the trade deadline.
that's nuts. Oh yeah.
Tanner, we were getting there. Right here. Tanner says no Serge Ibaka mention. I was gonna get there. He had the 3 that looked nice.
Mhm.
He'll
Killer
be
pump fake.
in Austin. He'll be in Austin most of the year. But really, I mean, like when you saw that 3 that he made, it reminded me of the 7 threes he made at Texas in one of the March Madness games. I love him as a 2-way guy. But I think the Bediako being out there, I would be very surprised if we signed somebody else to a 2-way.
Yeah, I think that's a safe bet too.
Just because also, like you mentioned last time, the framework of the roster where we would need depth is another center. So
I like Serge Rice's pump fake so much. It honestly gets me going. But he got swatted really bad at the end of the game.
he did.
I really thought he's gonna.
Who else
Oh,
got? Wasn't there somebody else who got swatted? I know there was a couple
probably?
posters, but
Oh,
I think Mamu. Was it Mamu got swatted? I don't know. Okay, my boy Barlow, man. Poor guy.
Ooh.
I was so happy when he got that rebound off the Devontae miss. I was like, he's going to give
I
us the lead.
forgot about that.
He's going to give us the lead. And
I
then
forgot.
he missed the layup, man. Oh, poor Barlow.
He
My
just
boy.
he
missed
knew you were watching.
I know. Bro, I wanted so bad for us to come back and win this game just so I could have came in it, but not because like so we could win and like
Yeah.
the stream would be great. Like I mean that I did want that. But really at that point, like when we were down like, 9 or something and he checks in at the 6-minute mark, I was like, if we come back and win this, who checked in at the 6-minute mark? That's what I was going to be in here saying. I was going to be saying Dom was the reason.
Hey, you know what? Say what you will about Dom. He had 0 points on 0 for 3 shooting, 2 boards, 2 assists. And you know what he still had, Jude?
What?
+9 in the box score.
My
guy just makes impact being out there, man.
He attacks the space, Ethan.
He attacks that empty space.
They don't know what to do.
You know what? That's tied for the best plus minus. It was Dom Barlow, Charles Bassie, and Serge Rice with +9s.
This was the other one I was thinking about, Boudet. This was the other one. I thought he was about to have a poster, and Kenrick swatted him. Kenrick Williams, man, I've never really dive deep into his tape, but I was shown how he was like kind of Herb Jones vibes tonight. Like I can see why the Thunder love him so much. He plays hard on defense.
They're a deep team, dude. Shout out to the Thunder. We're gonna hate them for years.
Yeah, it's tough, but like you could tell, like all the boos for Wemby.
Yeah,
and that was the other thing we haven't talked about. This when we're getting those foul calls now because of him, man.
Yes,
and
we are.
I'm sorry, I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad at all. I've watched 2 fine. I grew up on the first Spurs finals I really remember is 07, but even the real like conscious finals, right? Like kind of new basketball was the 2 Miami series. And it's like, we saw them get I know that there's obviously some calls that went San Antonio's way too, but like when you're playing that you grow up in those LeBron series, it's like, they just felt like they got every call,
Oh yeah,
and it feels like so many national TV games, like the Spurs, like it felt like, and I know we're Spurs fans, but it really felt like we were fighting the refs too, because we're not the media darling, and it's like Wembanyama.
Finally.
Now we are.
Finally.
And I'm not mad at it. I don't feel bad. I'm just like, this is makeup. This is justice for all the years we didn't get these.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. I'm just hoping my boy Keldon Johnson can get a couple of these fouls just because of that's my friend kind of beat,
Mm-hmm.
because my boy goes to the rim 90% of the time and gets bodied and doesn't get any calls. But yeah, Wemby's already at that level. He's already surpassed LeBron as far as being the face of the league. He's up
Oh
there.
my gosh, man. Oh my gosh. I'm trying to think if there's any other final thoughts I have on tonight, but I think we've covered it all, man. CD Sissoko, nothing in the stat sheet, but +5, baby.
2 assists and a rebound.
Yeah, but he's him. And if I really just wanted us to, really what I wanted to happen, I didn't want us to win. This will be my final note, Ethan. I wanted us to go to overtime.
Mm-hmm.
Because then I could have texted you and I'd have said, Dom came in the 6th minute to send us to overtime, and now we're about to be elite. You know what I'm saying?
I just hope he gets some Dom Wemby minutes, bro, next game.
Dom, we need him again.
We need to
Oh, my
put
poor
Wemby in
boy
there.
Dom, man.
I mean Dom, yeah, not Wemby. Of course he's in there.
Look, it's gonna be all fine when Dom's getting 30 and 15 in like a month playing for Austin. It's gonna be great.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay. I know I said that was my last thing, but I do have one more question for you off of this comment. Bude says, can't wait to see the KJ drive and kick out to Wemby for 3. Tanner says that's the worst sentence Jude has ever said. hey, I'm with Mark right here. Dominator. But okay, seriously, how do you think what are you excited to see from Keldon and Sohan like mixed into this?
I think they're just going to add another layer to our offense. There's both physical presences that do very different things offensively. Jeremy's going to create for everybody. Keldon is going to add another layer of scoring capability. I think he'll get his most open shots because Wemby's on the court. And the ball movement, I think, will be even better than it was tonight because those guys have been practicing together. So the cohesion, knock on wood, theoretically should improve with just them being on the floor.
Yeah. I don't want to make it as simple as this, but you kind of already said a lot of it. So I think what I'll say here, I think that Keldon is going to add a lot to our offense. And I know he's taken pride in being a defender, and I talk about the disrespect all the time. So I'm not trying to say that he's not going to impact the floor or that side of the floor. But when you're talking about Sohan and Keldon, I think, and obviously we've talked about Sohan's playmaking, but just to simplify it a little bit, I think Sohan's going to make a big impact on our defense, and I think Keldon's going to make a big impact on our offense.
Them boys coming. That's the Charles Barkley quote. Remember that?
to be okay.
He said, "Them young boys coming," is what he said.
Dude, I'm so. Did he say that about us or just
no? He said that. I can't remember which team he was talking about because man, these boys coming. Just like that, and Shaq, and kind of like Shaq, and he's like looking off camera at the crew, trying not to laugh.
Oh my gosh, I'm such a I realize how much of a Cajun I am because when you say that, it's just like I'm thinking back to 2018 Ed Orgeron after the Alabama loss. He was like, "We coming." That's the first thing that pops into my mind. But anyways. Don't forget to like and subscribe below. Y'all hit both of those buttons. We appreciate the crowd out here tonight. I don't know if all of our post games will be 45 minutes, but it's Wemby's debut, so we kind of had to give all of the first reactions to everything. And if you want to stay updated with the show and all the rest of our reactions this season, follow us on Twitter at SSPNLYT, at Jude McLaren, and at Ethan_Quintero. We appreciate you guys. We'll catch y'all in the next one. We'll see y'all later.